This is Paul Schneiderman today on the 106th edition of the Sports Untold podcast, also on Rainier Avenue Radio. My special guest today, again for the second time, is the Seattle Mariners television play-by-play commentator Dave Sims. Dave, last had you as a guest back in October 2019 when my show was then Sports and Stuff. It's now Sports Untold, and the world has changed a bit the last 2 years, to say the least, Mr. Sims. But great to have you back. Dave is a very popular broadcaster in the Pacific Northwest around the country. Dave is also the co-host with Coach Mike Krzyzewski, the famous basketball coach of the show Basketball and Beyond with Coach K. My Sports Untold podcast is now on Amazon, Spotify, YouTube, Facebook, and other outlets. Dave, really appreciate you coming back again on Sports Untold.
Thanks for the visit, Paul. Good to see you. How's everything?
Hanging in there. I want to know what you're up to, and it's great to have you back. So, Dave, I got a quick story. I mentioned this to you right before we started, and I'm going to give you more details on the story. So, I turned 50 last year. I will reveal my age. And my assistant, Lucius Tenebris, who's here, wanted to give me a birthday gift that reflected something with my show. And I want to show you the wood print that he put together. It's Sports and Stuff 60 with Dave Sims. Look at this wood print he gave me for my 50th birthday last year. So I thought you'd get a kick out of that. He picked a show and thought that'd be a fun one for a birthday gift. So I have this wood print. I thought you'd get a kick out of it. Send me a
picture of it.
I will for sure. I thought you enjoy that. Well, great, Dave. Great to have you back. And I'm going to get into some stuff, just sports in general, and of course the Mariners and baseball, and we'll have a lot of fun. Dave, I asked your colleague Shannon Dreyer a similar question the other day, and I don't think I asked you this last time you were on. Can you tell us about the first ever interview you did in the first play-by-play game that you covered? Can you mention your first time you did either of those?
First play-by-play I did in college at Little Bethany College in West Virginia, probably football season 1974. First one I remember getting paid for, I did a fill-in. I did a Princeton game. A friend of mine, Howard David, was the voice of Princeton football. I think he was doing some pro stuff. He couldn't make it that day, and I remember doing a game down in Princeton. That was a lot of fun. First interview, I think I remember interviewing, I guess 1973. I was an intern at the Philadelphia Inquirer, and oh goodness, I can't remember the guy I was partnered with from University of Arkansas, John something. He became a big editor down in Texas. And Tim Kelly, the sports director, asked us to do a piece, the two new interns in sports, to do a piece on summer basketball camps. And I remember interviewing the now late Jim Valvano when he was at Bucknell. That's one of the first interviews I remember. And I also remember, I think the first time I was to do the Phillies game lead story in 1974. And I went with Bruce Kiden, who was a great baseball writer in Philly. And the night before, and he wanted me to just get the lay of the land. Here's where you go, And I remember, so he turned me loose, and I went and started introducing myself to Steve Carlton, the Hall of Fame pitcher. And he looked at me like I had four heads. Nobody had told me that you don't talk to the starting pitcher the day he's pitching. I didn't know that. I was scared to death, and I sort of slinked away. I got a look that was just unbelievable. To this day, I think the last time I saw him about 20 years ago, I gave him grief about that. But that's one of the first interviews. Those are a couple of early things I do remember.
Boy, those are big names, Dave, you interacted with in your earlier career, Jimmy Valvano and Steve Carlton.
I've been very lucky. I'm an I-95 guy, born and raised in Philly, lived in New York most of my life. Philly's, arguably the best sports town in the country. And, when you intern in the Philadelphia Inquirer sports department for 2 seasons, they throw you in the deep end. And as a director friend of mine said, deep end, flood it and swim out. And that's been my career. A lot of it, just thrown in and, hey, let me see what you can do.
Hey, I got thrown into some courtrooms as a young attorney. I got my rear end kicked a couple times, but I got the experience.
Absolutely.
I got the experience.
Absolutely. you
Dave,
learn.
are you in New York now, mostly off season, New York City? Is that generally?
Absolutely.
Okay. Okay.
Absolutely. That's why I have, I just came back from a couple errands, and I always love walking through. If I have any excuse to walk back through Grand Central, it's one of my favorite buildings.
I love the backdrop. I love the Jackie 42 hat. So I kidded you earlier. You got a New York theme going right now. But you definitely feel like a great tie to Seattle. You've been broadcaster many years, and you have a tie to Philadelphia. You're kind of a national guy, aren't you, Dave?
Well, yeah. Just finished my 15th year with the Mariners. I did, I was with ESPN and Westwood One. ESPN doing national games for a lot of years, and East Coast regional games, and then Westwood One national games, national radio for NFL, college football, college basketball, NCAA tournament. So yeah, I mean, a red-blooded American. What can I tell you?
You definitely had a lot of experience with different cities in the sports world. So I didn't ask you this last time. That's one thing about having a fun guy like you back and getting to some questions I have a chance to ask last time you were on. So I want to learn more about your show with Coach K, your radio show you've had for many years. And is Coach K the 21st century college basketball version of John Wooden?
Yeah, you could say that for sure. And we've had a great relationship. We're in our 17th year, basketball and beyond. And, we talk about his team. We talk about, the scope of college basketball. We have, and the thing that's great, not only do we talk basketball about Duke, the ACC, the NCAA tournament when that time comes around, but in the beyond segment, we get people from all different walks of life. I mean, we've had Martin Dempsey, who was the former chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff. He's been on a couple times. We've had David Rubenstein, the big philanthropic Wall Street guy. We've had the GM, the CEO of GM, and I think Ford. We've had Mrs. Barbara Bush a long time, way back, first, second year.
Wow.
And we've had everybody in baseball. We usually get all the World Series managers. We got Brian Snitker like a few days right after they won it. We've had pretty much everybody in baseball. We've met a lot of the young stars in baseball who grew up Duke fans, like Bryce Harper. He's been on a couple times. Dansby Swanson from Atlanta. Of course, everybody in basketball, LeBron, the Chuckster, Jay Wright. We just a pantheon of basketball guys. And Mike and I met back in 1976-7. I was at the New York Daily News, and eventually became president of the Metropolitan Basketball Association. And we used to have, during basketball season, we'd have these great luncheons at the late and lamented Mama Leone's, 8th Avenue off of 49th or 50th, 48th Street, I think it was. And we would get together with the local basketball writers, and if anybody national was in town, and the writers would get a chance to, hobnob with the coaches, and they could, notes, quotes, anecdotes, and they, tell stories about their ball club. And, we get advanced stories if you had a game later on that week. And back in those days, and in those days, we had Bill Raftery, PJ Carlissimo, Krzyzewski, Tom Penders, Lou Carnesecca. I mean, we had great coaches here in the New York metropolitan area. And Mike was a shy and retiring type, and now he's has been at the top of the mountain for a long time. And he's a funny guy. He's a big sports fan, big Chicago guy. We've had a lot of Chicago personalities on. We haven't had Michael Jordan, but we've had pretty much everybody else. We've had both. I think we've had all the commissioners on. It's been great. The cachet he brings to the table as one of the foremost coaches in the history of the country. Generally, and we get NASCAR guys. We get Saban. We've had Belichick. We've heard Belichick. Belichick's been a riot. He's been fun with us. And peer to peer, it's been great. So I sort of I set it up, tee it up, try to, I jump in occasionally, but it's this is sort of George Fenneman for you old timers, or Ed McMahon. It's the second banana. It works out pretty well.
Dave, this is so much fun because people in Northwest are so aware of you as a Mariners TV guy. I don't think a lot of people are aware of this great show you co-host with Mike Krzyzewski, Coach K, and it's neat these guests are. You had a former First Lady on. I mean, my gosh, it's a heck of a roster of guests you guys are getting. So
yeah, we've had all the NASCAR winners, I think, every year for years. You had Jimmy Johnson. I mean, you name them. What's his name? Dale Earnhardt Jr. the current winner. I mean, we've had them all. So it's been terrific.
Are you a NASCAR fan at all, Dave?
Not really, but I appreciate the heck out of what those guys do. I mean, the endurance it takes, to go 500 miles. You're cooped up in small, in a small, super confined space. It's a talent. It takes nerve. It takes guts. It takes skill. A lot of respect for those guys.
No doubt about it. Paul Schneiderman hosts the 106th edition of Sports Untold, also on Rainier Avenue Radio, with the Mariners TV man, Dave Sims. Dave, you had a big call. I think it was October 2nd of this year. The Mariners won. You called Haniger's big hit. It got a lot of national publicity. It was just great. Dave yelled, hey now, 3 times. And I'd play it if we had more time. But it was just a heck of a broadcast moment. Would you say that's your personal favorite of all the calls you've done describing plays as a broadcaster?
Certainly, baseball wise, it's probably, as to use horse racing parlance, it's an entry with Felix pitching the perfect game back in 2012. But this was so big. I mean, to get this close to the playoffs, and that was such an incredibly meaningful hit. Clutched up, just fabulous. It was perfect. He was right guy, right spot, big moment, and I was glad to document it broadcasting wise. It was great, a lot of fun. And the thing that was really cool about it was a lot of things cool about it. But I got home that night as I was driving home, and my phone was just beeping like crazy. I talked to some people when I got home, and then the next morning. I was talking to one of my sons, and he said, you've got close to, and I think it went beyond 2 million views.
Well, when I heard it, I'm like, I got to give Dave a high five. I couldn't do it in person, but it was a great call. Dave, we're gonna get back to baseball, of course, but I want to ask you about some local happenings in Seattle, and I think it'll be fun to hear your perspective on some other Seattle sports things going on. Dave, you've covered football, you played football, you know the sport well. Any just thoughts on the Jimmy Lake firing at UW and what you think UW should do as a coach? I just kind of wanted to pick your brain on the UW football situation.
I'm like I said, I'm back on the East Coast. I haven't really been following it that closely. I feel badly for Jimmy. Never got a chance to meet him. The little bit I did see of him on TV, I thought he presented really well. A lot of unfortunate things happen there. I mean, I'm way too distant to even begin to try to comment on something like that. I'm sorry that he lost his job, and hope he gets another strong chapter somewhere else as a head coach. It'd be great.
Yeah, I just wanted to hear your point on that. Any thoughts on this whole Seattle Kraken craze going on in Seattle?
Well, hockey's a great sport. I covered when I was doing sports talk radio here in New York. At WNBC and WFAN. I mean, hockey, the sports landscape here in New York is humongous. We have 3 hockey teams. So this is going back. I left FAN many moons ago, but during the time I was on, and even going back to when I was in high school, I became a hockey fan in high school. I mean, I knew the league as well as I know football, baseball, and basketball. I barely know anybody in the league now. I used to be able to tell you who, I can name every coach and GM and players and everything. But I think hockey has a chance to be fabulous in Seattle. What they did with the arena, I haven't been in it yet. I look forward to getting there when I get back to town. But it looks like, and from what people tell me, it's spectacular. That's very exciting. And they got an expansion team. You would like them to have the success that Vegas had a few years ago when they were an expansion team and they went to the Stanley Cup final. That's probably not going to happen. But if they can finish over 500, hey, maybe make their way into the playoffs, that'd be great. And the other thing that's terrific about hockey, and I always say this, it's a great sport. It's not a good sport. It's a great sport when you're in the building. It doesn't translate as well to TV unless you're a hardcore fan. But I think if you were a sports fan and you had a chance to go to a hockey game, and I don't care if you had good seats or cheap seats, it's just so thrilling. It's tremendous. And I got a kick out of it. Let's see. The last time we had a Mariners caravan would have been January of 2020. And I was with a group that went north, and we wound up going to a Canucks game. And I hadn't been to a hockey game in years, and it was great. We were way upstairs and then the top level, and it was fabulous. Enjoyed the heck out of it. Went down to say hello to some of the guys, and it was a lot of fun.
Well, like many Seattle fans, Dave, I'm slowly learning more about hockey. I've been to a couple of Kraken games. It really is a heck of a in-person spectator sport. I couldn't agree with you more. Watching these guys
Yeah,
slam against the screen, God, they're great athletes.
and their skill level is unbelievable. I mean, a goalie can leave that much over his shoulder, and that guy can fill it with a puck. And and my greatest memories of hockey growing up in Philly, before the Flyers became really good, and my brother and I, we'd be the only two black guys in the spectrum, but I would only pick games because that's when the NHL doubled itself. So I only went to see the original six teams. So you still had stars. You had Montreal, Toronto, Detroit, Chicago, Boston, and New York. I think I'm leaving somebody out. But anyway, those were great. I mean, I got to see all the stars: Bobby Orr, Phil Esposito, Gordie Howe, Bobby Hull, Mont Cornway, Jean Bellevue. I mean, I can name that whole crew from back in the day.
Well, you know hockey too, Dave. Dave, I want to encourage my listeners to feel free to comment and like, and I got one comment here from one of my viewers. Todd has written, "Bring back the Supersonics." We got the NBA back in Seattle, don't we, Dave?
It's gonna happen, but boy, they've been saying it for a long time. But it's such a great basketball market, and it's an absolute crime that the team was allowed to move, that wasn't sold to another local interest. But I mean, it's great legacy, great history of the NBA in Seattle, and it'll be a thrill. The last time I remember going to a game, PJ Carlesimo was coaching, Kevin Durant, I think, was in his his first year, his rookie year, and they were playing Houston. I remember I got a chance to say hello to him in the layup line, and they were playing Houston and Shane Battier, who had that during time down at Duke. I got a chance to say hello to those guys. That's going back. That's like 07. That'd have been April of 08. Yeah.
1 year Seattle had Durant. We all knew he was going to be a superstar. Paul Schneiderman, host of the Sports Untold podcast, 106th edition, with the Mariners TV broadcaster Dave Sims. Dave, when you were on last time, I asked you to mention a living sports figure that you would love to interview. You mentioned Sandy Koufax. You gave a great answer. I've got some terrific answers to that question from all sorts of guests. Can you mention another living sports figure? It could be a manager or an owner that you would love to have a sit down with.
I'd love to have I've met him once, in person once, like on the phone twice. No, once. I would say Jim Brown, because I still consider him one of the greatest athletes the country's ever produced, let alone the greatest running back ever. I don't care what the numbers say. I don't care. With all due respect, Emmitt Smith and all the guys who subsequently passed him. But I mean, the man averaged 5.2 yards a carry, about 104 yards per game, every game of his career. And as a social activist, he's been at the forefront of that. And especially, I mean, he's in his 80s now. He's got to be 84, 85, and still he's not, it's not moving, not bouncing around that much. But smart man, got a lot together. He would be. He's one guy that comes to mind of the guys who are still very much with us.
He'd be a great guy to chat with. And Dave, who is a deceased sports figure in history you would have loved to have interviewed or had a conversation with?
It's not even close. This guy, Jackie Robinson.
Jackie.
No question. As the late great Joe Morgan said, he told us a couple of years ago. He said when Joe was a rookie, and Mr. Robinson, I think Mr. Robinson was doing a game in a week, and Joe woke up that morning, had breakfast. I got this speech. I'm gonna tell him what he means to me, and what it was like hearing stories, and and then gets to the ballpark, and out of nowhere, Mr. Robinson shows up, and I guess Joe had just taken the field, and he came up upon him, and Joe said he froze, and all he said was, "Thank you." Mr. Robinson said, "You're welcome." I was like, that wraps it up pretty nicely.
No doubt.
I wouldn't be here without he and so many guys of his generation. There's no question.
What a great American, Jackie Robinson. I think he would be my number one person at the C Sports list. Someone else who I think would be in second place or third place would be Hank Greenberg. He would have been a fascinating guy to talk to as well.
Yeah. I hear great stories. A New York guy out of the Bronx. And he, let's see, 1947, his only year in the National League after 15, 16 years with Detroit. He was a guy that embraced and supported Jackie Robinson in that year. And that would have been 1947 was Jackie's rookie year. Yeah.
There was that story where I think Hank Greenberg had a conversation with Jackie when they were at first base together when the Tigers were playing the Dodgers. I believe that was.
It had to been when it was at
Pirates.
the
Pirates. Sorry, Pirates. Right, National League. Pirates. Yeah, there's a great.
As a Jewish American, Hank Greenberg went through a lot of garbage too, especially when he was challenging Ruth's season home run record.
Both those guys saw a lot. Greenberg and Robinson, very fascinating men in sports. Well, Dave, there's a new book out, and I try to read books before I comment too much on them, but let me slip here for a second. There's a book out. I read a review of it in the Wall Street Journal the other day by Joe Posnanski. I believe I'm pronouncing his last name right, a journalist. You may know him.
Posnanski, yeah, Kansas City.
Yeah, you know a lot of people.
A very good baseball writer. Very good.
You know a lot of the media figures and players. And he has a new book out called The Baseball 100. I want to pick your brain on it. And I hear it's a terrific book. And he picks is the top 5. He picks Willie Mays number 1, Ruth second, Barry Bonds 3, Hank Aaron 4. And his number 5 is an interesting guy who played in the Negro Leagues, Oscar Charleston. What do you think of picking Mays 1? And what do you think of Oscar Charleston getting in the top 5?
I didn't see Mr. Charleston play. I've heard good things about him from Bob Kendrick, who runs the Negro Leagues Museum. And Hall of Fame in Kansas City. I got no problem with Willie Mays. I mean, I didn't see Mr. Robinson play. I saw Willie Mays play a lot, and a lot of it in person in Philly. I got no beef with that at all. Not at all. Who's he got? Babe Ruth second?
He has, Ruth second. Barry Bonds is 3.
I get that. I totally get that. Babe Ruth, was a dominant pitcher before he became solo as a hitter. Barry Bonds, I think, we certainly, he has, if you just look at him, he did something different to alter his appearance. Having said that, you still got to be able to hit the ball. Just because you take, you took an additive to help build yourself up. He was only getting 1 pitch a night to hit, and maybe 2 or 3 pitches a night to hit, and he was making contact all the time. I get that. I mean, his numbers are ridiculous, and I do subscribe to what a lot of I don't vote. I was a member of the Baseball Writers a long time ago, but not long enough to be able to get a vote. But you definitely can still make a case for him being an MVP, even if you take out the suspected steroid years. But that's a whole. We can go hither and yon on that. The Hammer was 4 or 5.
Yeah,
Hammer was
4, and he has Charleston 5.
The Hammer's numbers are phenomenal. Had he played in a big market like LA, in New York or LA, he'd be as big as Willie Mays. Willie Mays was played in New York at the beginning of his career, and that was a big boon to him. Like it or not, you play here. The Sinatra song said, "You make it here, you can make it anywhere." And if you make it here as big as he did, you're going to be huge. You're going to be probably. But I don't think there's any exaggeration in the accomplishments of Willie Mays. But the Hammer, man, oh man, his hit the market consistency, and nobody talks about it. Great outfielder, cannon for an arm, great base stealer. And I saw, who did I see? Somebody. Oh, Jim Cott told a story about how. It was the All-Star game. That's what it was. An All-Star game. I think he said Mays doubled. No, Clemente doubled. Clemente doubled. Aaron's the next hitter. And Aaron, you would think Aaron's trying to pop one out. He tried to hit the ball to the right side to advance the runner. The runner at second, nobody out. And he wound up popping up to the right side. And when Kitty told that story, I said, wow, that is the true meaning of a great baseball player right there. I mean, it's one of the greatest, arguably one of the 1, 2, 3 top 4 baseball players ever, giving himself up to advance a runner in an All-Star game. Wow, I thought that spoke volumes.
But you like that top 5 list?
And Oscar Charleston, shortstop, I believe he was.
I don't know much about him. I don't want to mislead you. I don't know about his career.
What did Joe have? If Joe had him number 5, Joe no doubt did tremendous research on that and came up with that final conclusion for good reason. And I think Joe, being in Kansas City, no doubt knew and probably had a great relationship with Buck O'Neil. And if that comes from Buck O'Neil, which I'm sure it did, that's good enough for me.
Good enough for you. Love to hear your feedback on that list, Dave. Dave, I was going to get to this question a little later, but you mentioned Jim Cott, And Jim Cott, for the listeners, was a famous baseball player. I think he played about probably the late 70s. And
he played from Kitty played from the late 50s into the late 70s. I mean, he was finishing up with the Phillies and the Reds as a reliever. Yeah, good man, great guy.
Well, I want to ask you, so baseball, a couple of baseball Hall of Fame committees are meeting on December 5th in Orlando this year. And there's this early baseball committee for many of them players that played in the Negro Leagues that played before 1950. And there's this, I believe they call it the Golden Days era ballot, Dave. This is for people who are not in the Hall of Fame that are being considered that played from about 50 to 69. So let me go through this list with you. I want to get your thoughts on these guys' Hall of Fame chances. So the three living ones in that group are Jim Cott, Tony Oliva.
He's in. I'm good. Kitty's in. He won 16, 17 Gold Gloves, won something like 284, 85 games. Longevity and the fact that he's been one of the best baseball analysts on TV over the last, 30 years. And the last game of the 1994 season ended August 6, 7, 1994. I was doing a BNet game with Kitty on ESPN. It was the Braves at Atlanta. It's the only time I had a chance to work a game with him, but it was spectacular. Wonderful man.
Oh,
good
I bet.
guy.
So Jim Cott, you think should definitely get in. Let me mention a couple of names. Just give me your takes on these guys. Tony Oliva, who I can't believe is not in the Hall of Fame. I thought he was in like 30 years ago. That surprised me. He's not in.
Tony, a great hitter. I would put him. I think he, his impact for his, I think before the knees totally went, but he had about a 7-year run. That was as good as anybody.
300 plus hitter. Let me throw out some other names here. They're on this list or being considered next month in Orlando. Maury Wills, Ken Boyer, Gil Hodges, Roger Maris, Minnie Minoso, Danny Murtaugh, and Billy Pierce. Do you think all those guys should get in?
Billy Pierce used to get his baseball card all the time. He was with the White Sox, I believe, for the bulk of his career. Danny Murtaugh won the 60 and 71 World Series. I wouldn't have a problem with that. Minnie Minoso, Black Cuban, first black player,
13-time
All-Star.
White
Sox, yeah, and probably I think when he retired, had been hit by a pitch more than anybody in the history of the game. I don't know about Minnie, but he was famous too. I think part of it is numbers and being famous. He certainly was famous in Chicago. Gil Hodges in New York, you'd get a ton of votes here. For Gil Hodges, I mean, the remaining Brooklyn Dodger fans and anybody who's listened to those stories would tell you that Gil Hodges is Hall of Fame dominant hitter at first base. Who was it? Maury Wills was 102 stolen bases, I think 62, broke Cobb's record. I would consider that. And there was Kenny Boyer. Boyer, really good third baseman, largely with the Cardinals, hit a couple of big home runs in the 64 World Series. And who was the other guy?
Roger Maris, who's such a huge name, and he's not in. What do you think? Should Maris be in?
Back-to-back MVPs, single season home run record for a long time. Didn't see a lot of him except in the World Series back when I was a kid. He didn't have as long as he did have a great year with the Cardinals. I want to say 68. I don't know about Hall of Fame, but certainly. He should be considered. I don't have all the numbers in front of me, but I don't know. I don't have a good feeling about that. But if he got in, I wouldn't have a problem. I really, to be honest with you, I don't have a problem with any of them. But I mean, if you're looking for answers, I would say doubtful for Maris. I hope Hodges, and hoping for Kitty to get in. Billy Pierce, I don't know how many games he won. I know he had some good years. I know nothing. He's left-handed, I believe.
And I believe these guys have to get 12 of the 16 votes of this committee to get in. And I guess Cott and Oliva just missed the last time they had that committee vote, by like one vote or so.
Dick Allen's not on that list?
You know what? He may be on that list, and I may have forgotten to mention Dick Allen. Oh, my God. He died last year, Dick Allen. He has a great Hall of Fame case, too, doesn't he?
He would have been in last. He should have been. Well, I could give you a chapter and verse on that, but he should be in. Every contemporary, I say this all the time, but every contemporary who I've met, Dick Allen, they get indignant that you would even ask the question. Dominant player. Terrific.
Dave, you may find this interesting. I had a law professor on my show about a year and a half ago ago, and a guy named Mitch Nathanson. He's a law professor at Villanova, and he's written a lot on the legalities of baseball and stuff. He wrote a biography on Dick Allen, and we talked a lot about Dick Allen. It was very interesting.
What's his first name?
Mitch Nathanson, a law professor at Villanova. So
I wonder if that's a book. I have a book about the '64 collapse. Yeah. Chico Ruiz stealing home. Frank Robinson at the plate started a 12-game losing streak for the Phillies.
He's written a lot on Philly sports, but we talked a lot about Dick Allen and according to Nathanson, Allen, tell me if you agree with this, Dave. Allen was probably the first African American baseball superstar who wanted to be treated like a superstar.
I was a 10-year-old when he came. Let's see, his rookie of the year was '64. So I was 11. He got a lot of bad treatment from the Philadelphia press, which, he wanted to be known as Dick Allen, or Rich Allen, but they tried to diminish him by give him a childlike name, Richie. He was the first Phillies black superstar, and this is a city in my hometown, an organization that gave Jackie Robinson more guff and grief and BS than anybody, except with maybe the exception of the Cardinals. So I don't know if I'm buying that.
Yeah. Well, he made the point that Dick Allen wanted to be respected. That was his point. He was willing to stand up. That's what he meant.
That's
what he meant.
Okay.
Yeah, that's what he meant. Maybe
right.
I didn't state that well, but he wanted to be respected.
That's the key.
Anyhow. Yeah. So to be fair, Nathanson had more that he elaborated on that point. But yeah, anyhow. Hey, I want to kind of get to a little bit of some of the off-season Mariners stuff. And let me ask you a retro question for a second. So the M's made some trade deadline deals late August of 2021. Of course, the Graveman-Toro trade got a lot of local controversy. Do you think, Dave, looking back, there was a little more the M's could have done at the deadline that could have got them into a tiebreaker in the wild card? Was there just a little more they could have done?
Yeah, you could say that, but it didn't. And you look at what Angelopoulos did in Atlanta. He got 4 guys, and they all clicked. They say it's a crapshoot sometimes. I think the players did. We're looking for more help. They did. They did make a couple moves, and maybe not as spectacular and dynamic as they would have liked. But again, the killer, for the Mariners was the Friday night 2-1 loss to the third from the last game on a Friday night, where they had runner at second, nobody out twice, and don't even get the guy to third. We move forward. I'm not.
I was just curious if you thought there was a little trade they could have done or something they could have got.
I don't know. I don't know who they expected to walk through the door, but it is what it is now.
Fair enough. Dave, I was telling Shannon Dreyer on this the other day. Your colleague was on my show. I've had both of you back to back 2 years later, and I mentioned to Shannon, I feel like when I'm reading all the baseball free agency blogs, it's like a jigsaw puzzle. It's kind of overwhelming trying to figure out who's going to sign with who, and all the different bloggers and journalists who'd have different takes on who's going to sign with who. Are there 1 or 2 players, Dave, that you have in mind that you'd love to have the Mariners bring in? If you could just mention 1 or 2 that you would just love for them to sign.
And I think Shannon told you this, and I think everybody's read this. Marcus Semien is a guy that they have on the top of their board, and Chris Bryant's probably 1A or number 2. And if you got 1 or both of those guys, man, that would be a tremendous addition to the ball club. I like everybody else. I'm waiting with bated breath to see, who Jerry comes up with. I know he's out there shopping. He's out there putting on the hard, fraternity rush, if you will. Hopefully he comes back with, the Parcells would say, hopefully he comes back with the grocery bags filled.
Would you be up for the M's signing someone like Scherzer or Kershaw? Would you go with one of those older?
You don't even have to ask a question like that, of course. But, us talking about it's not going to make it happen. So, would I love to have some of the premier guys? Absolutely. But if it happens, wonderful. If not, you adjust and make do with what you have. And I think the thing that's great about promising about this club, they hit like 226, which was dead last in the major leagues, but their clutch stats were at or number 1. Bullpen was spectacular. Nobody saw this. and the starting pitching did a real good job. And, we just came up a little bit short. Nobody saw 90 wins with this team. I was actually, all due respect to Kevin Cash and Dusty Baker, Scott Service's case for being manager here, I thought was a little bit stronger, given that everybody had him and he's anywhere from 65 to 72 wins, and he wins 90 and misses the playoffs by a game. That to me, and looking at that, looking at the personnel, going, that's manager of the year right there, dude. I know Cash won 100 games for back-to-back years, but you'd make a case for that was expected, but it certainly wasn't expected with the Mariners, what they did. And I, what's interesting is, since I've been back home in New York and seeing a lot of guys and talking to people, and I've heard in person and via social media text, we were rooting for you. We were rooting for you guys. I went to a basketball game recently. We were pulling for you guys to win. America loves the underdog, and we certainly were the underdog, and that would have been a hell of a story if we had made the playoffs.
Well, the Mariners have been kind of the Charlie Brown of pro sports franchises for a long time. Things haven't always worked out for the Mariners, but maybe we'll start a new era here in the early 2020s. Dave, you got a national perspective. One reason I enjoy talking to you so much, you're based in New York, and you cover the Mariners, and you're from Philly, and you've covered so many teams, and sports around the country so well. Let me ask you something about Seattle as a major league city in terms of getting free agents. There's been thinking for many years. The Robinson Cano sign is kind of an example. Is that the Mariners have to really overpay to get top free agents to Seattle? Do you buy that premise, or are things changing?
Well, I think the fact, if you just look at the history, what's happened, I mean, that particular case is the one that jumps out at you. And I know from talking to a few people recently, the fact that Seattle is where it is geographically, some guys maybe are not warming to that. But I tell you what, the thing that's exciting about going into the 2022 season is that we're all capitalists. The Mariners hit the number. Boom, baby. We'll see what happens. And I think that the fact that it's a young team that's shown unbelievable moxie with, an organization that has been highly regarded the last year or two, with developing young players. It would seem to me that it'd be an exciting place to be. And I think that if you're a free agent, I mean, you got Ken Griffey Jr., a Hall of Famer, one of the greatest players ever, part of ownership now. You got a question, you call Junior. Call some of the guys who are succeeding in Seattle. And I tell you, Mariners, let me tell you something. The Mariners, and I had so many guys say this, but they will be so loved up, they make the playoffs and make a run. And it will become very attractive. And I can remember back in the 90s when Junior and those guys they had it going. And my youngest son's a left-hand hitter. And I remember he said, "Hey, Dad, Junior and the Mariners are coming to Yankee Stadium. We got to get tickets." And I had to, I need 4 tickets to go to Yankee Stadium for a couple of games. Believe me, if you can get the whole winning thing going, you'll deal with the travel. It is what it is. It's a great ballpark. It's a great city. And it just needs the spark to get a tradition of winning, to get people, to get guys excited to come there. And the fact that the Mariners are doing, it certainly looks like they're doing a hell of a job growing their own. I think that's going to be a big impact as we move forward.
I loved your point about Griffey as part of the ownership group. That may have a little lure to some players, perhaps. That there's
Can't hurt.
Can't hurt.
Can't hurt.
Dave, this is Paul Scheimer again, 106th edition of a Sports Untold podcast, also on Rainier Avenue Radio with the Mariners TV man, Dave Sims. Dave, another kind of historical question for you. Was the Cano signing a mistake?
I was stunned that he left New York. Absolutely stunned. He was on a path to where you would call to your maintenance guys, clear out a spot in Monument Park for this guy. I enjoyed the heck out of having him in Seattle. I enjoyed my relationship with him. I enjoyed watching him play. He was able to help recruit Nelson Cruz come to Seattle. And what was it? Won 89 games in the 18 season and fell short. Fell short in 16, fell short in 14. It didn't work out. You move on.
Fair enough. And you bring so it's, hey, speaking of Cano, guys like Cano and Bonds and Clemens, I asked Shannon Dreyer a similar question. Where are you on the steroids allegations surrounding some of these aforementioned players for the
Yeah,
Hall of
yeah.
Fame? Where do you come out on that, Dave?
I think that I don't see
Clemens,
these guys getting in. I don't see it getting in. If he hadn't gotten in now, it ain't going to happen. And like you and Shannon were talking about, I mean, I had forgotten about this, and you guys, one or both of you quipped about having stuff sent to his wife. I mean, really, dude, come on. So, and the fact that he had an unbelievable finish, a flourish in his later years. You know, I don't consider myself a judge and jury, but that's very, very, very shaky to say the least, and very suspicious. Therefore, if I had a vote, I wouldn't vote him in. I have to agree with most of the guys, most of the writers on that.
I think I mentioned to Shannon the other day that if you want to put on a legal hat, Bonds' conviction was overturned and Clemens was acquitted. So just, I don't know if that has any bearing on the Hall of Fame voters, but just food for thought. But anyhow.
Yeah, no, that's a legit fact. But I just think the writers, from what they've seen, from what I've seen, from what I've heard, it doesn't add up really well. It really doesn't.
A little bit of a stigma.
Without a doubt.
And baseball does have a character requirement in their Hall of Fame eligibility rules. Then again, Ty Cobb is in. I mean, there's some people that are in right now. They're not the greatest people.
No, I'm hearing you. I'm hearing you. We're not talking to the pearly gates.
Right.
And you don't want to come across, but you don't want to be sanctimonious about it. But there's certain limits. There's certain parameters you got to stay within.
Not everyone in these sports Hall of Fames is Mother Teresa. Let's face it.
Absolutely not. Absolutely not. This is the same sport in the same country that didn't allow Black Americans to play until 1947. So again, you can high horse it to a certain point, but so I don't think we'll probably be long gone by the time if and when they get in.
I think you're onto something. It sure seems most of the writers are skeptical of a lot of those aforementioned guys. Dave, I'm going to back up. I'm going to ask you a little question out of the box. What's your favorite sports movie?
Wow.
I can give you some ideas.
No. Remember the Titans, Field of Dreams.
Mm-hmm.
Jim Thorpe, All-American with Burt Lancaster, who was also in Field of Dreams, one of my favorite actors of all time. That was the Jim Thorpe story. 42 wasn't bad. It was pretty good. Brian's Song.
Mm-hmm.
What was the one? Robbie, what do you call it? The
Robbie Benson.
Robbie Benson. Yeah, that's a good one. So that's what's that? 5. Those are some good ones right there.
My one of my recent guests, Renault Bean, has a show at Rain Ave Radio, and Renault mentioned the Robbie Benson movie is his favorite sports movie. It came out
that's a good one.
I like The Natural. I like Any Given Sunday. I liked
Any Given Sunday was not bad.
Not bad. I like Hoop Dreams. That was a good one.
Wow, that was powerful.
Good one.
And I remember I did a game with Bill Raftery. We did a Marquette game in Milwaukee, and I think that one of the kids was still on the team. He got 1 year. I can't even remember the 2 names, but one of the kids was still there. I think that was pretty wild. Yeah.
Great documentary, very powerful one. Well, let me shift back to baseball, Dave. Where do you come out on the idea of having universal DH rule? It's being discussed in the CBA negotiations right now.
I'm in for it. Make it happen. I mean, for every Madison Bumgarner, Zach Greinke, I think Scherzer can swing it a little bit. There's hundreds of other guys who haven't hit since high school, and it's not their fault. And it's not entertaining. And baseball's an entertainment vehicle. And I don't find anything entertaining looking at a guy who can't put the ball in play for a base hit, let alone get down a bunt. Not interesting. And I grew up a National League guy. And the last 15 years watching the American League, I'm all in. Give me the DH. And the other thing, too, it employs 15, 20 more guys. I think may not be, it probably won't be with the Mariners, but somebody's going to sign Nelson Cruz for next year. He's an anomaly to say the least. I mean, if he had ungodly number of home runs and RBIs in this past season with Minnesota and Tampa, I'd much rather see him swing the bat than almost any pitcher. I'm trying to remember, as a kid growing up, Drysdale and Gibson were good hitting pitchers. And there's a few more, but few and far. But Rick Wise was a good hitting pitcher.
I think Steve Carlton was an okay hitting pitcher, wasn't he?
Yeah, he wasn't bad. That's a good call. Good call. Yeah, he wasn't bad.
Wasn't bad. Let me just kind of play devil's advocate. But one thing with the pitcher hitting, there's some fascinating strategy calls. Do you take the pitcher out in the 7th or 8th inning, the starting pitcher who was throwing like a 2-hitter?
Well, they take pitchers out in the 4th inning if it looks like he's gone for the 3rd time. I'm not all in on that. I mean, I agree with and the analytics I like, but I also like the eye test. As Ron Washington often says, the sound of the ball coming off the bat will tell you when to go get your boy. And when they start squaring up things, that's when you go get them. But, freaking out because he's about to face for a 3rd time, I can think of so many pitchers recently that were taken, gives up a walk, gives up a base hit in the 6th, 7th innings. He's going through the 3rd time, panic, and take him out. Or other times you have a guy pitches the 7th or 8th inning, goes 1, 2, 3, bring him back. He's hot. Leave him alone. And the game is, everybody seems to do that. I got an 8th inning guy, I got a 9th inning guy, 7th inning guy. If the guy, and somebody brought this up about Goose Gossage was pitching, and Raleigh Fingers and those guys, if they came in the 7th inning, it was their game the rest of the way. I mean, the game's changed. I understand that. And I know I'm now being a member of the Get Off My Lawn Club, but I mean, the game's different for sure.
Interesting feedback on the DH. Another thing coming up in the CBA discussions, won't go into everything, but just a couple interesting issues, is there was a 16 playoff system in the truncated odd 2020 year. There's talk about a 14-team playoff system. What do you think about expanding the playoffs like that?
Leave it alone. Leave it like it is right now, because you run into trouble competing with the National Football League in September and October and into November. We don't need, hi, everybody, happy Thanksgiving, and today is the 7th game of the World Series. No, I'm not going. It's not going to happen. Don't need it. And then those two teams, if that were to happen, and then those teams they've lost a month and a half, and that before you even catch your breath, it's time to go back to spring for spring training. I'm fine with the playoffs the way they are right now.
I hear you. I understand. Let me just quickly, a couple other issues coming up in the discussions. Limit on pitcher pickoff attempts, ban on shifts, 15-second pitch clock. Do you like any of those?
Give me the pitch clock. Give me the pitch clock. If you modified the shift rules, I wouldn't have a problem with that. I'm open to discussion on that. I know it's not easy to hit 95 the other way. I get that. And the numbers it's amazing how many times you see guys, they're the exact centimeter, and that's where the guy hits the ball. I get that. And it's worked in the Mariners' favor a lot. Mariners had defended pretty well last year. 15-second pitch clock. Oh, give me that. These guys that get up on the mound and then they hold the ball and it's like they're wishing. It's like, dude, throw the damn ball. Will you please? You're a major league pitcher. Throw a strike. Make it quality.
Get the show on the road,
Yeah, I mean, time of game, the late, great Red Foley here in New York, I don't want to hear a Red Foley impersonating time of game for a 9-inning till 4 hours and 9 minutes. Not interested. I mean, these games shouldn't be going more than 3. I mean, Bob Gibson used to, and again, I'm dating myself, but I don't care. We're losing an hour and a half. Now, that's an exaggeration, but, 2.5 is plenty. 3, now I can't tell you how many times 7:10 start, it's 9 o'clock, and we're in the top of the 4th inning. Really? Come on. I know we have to make some money, obviously, and we might. There's an extra 30 seconds here and there, but just come on,
get things moving a little more.
And we've lost. I going on walks and everything. You see kids skateboarding and doing everything but playing a form of baseball. Come on.
A few little changes.
Football's kicking our butt, and we got to. And the other thing too, we got to market our guys better. I don't know what. There's smart people in baseball, but you don't see a whole lot of baseball dudes getting national advertisements, and that's a shame.
We talked about that, Dave. You're on my show 2 years ago. Baseball is going to market a little more these individual players. We talked about that. There's some
some great guys, but let's go. Come on, let me see these guys. Come on, get them some products.
Couldn't agree more. Can I get like 2 more questions in, Dave? You okay with that?
Yeah, go ahead.
Good.
Sure.
There's some. This is coming up in the CBA talks. I don't want to get too esoteric here, but there's some feelings that teams can be incentivized to lose too much. Would you support some changes with like draft picks and less rewarding a poor performance?
Well, we got. How much time do you have on this?
I got 4 hours.
I mean,
I know.
Yeah, you hate to see. I mean, I get it, but watching teams tank, it's not appetizing. And I know people want to position themselves and get good draft choice and all that stuff. Let's have everybody all out. Let's go. I mean, it's not my money. I don't have spreadsheets in front of me, but I'd like everything, full bore competition. That's what I like.
Maybe have a few tweaks and maybe changing the draft picks and how some of those issues are handled. Yeah.
Well, first, the other thing too, I'd like to see the players in MLB agree that the sun is yellow, and that's a good start from there. Maybe they can start agreeing on some things and come to compromise on some issues, and then let's not have a lockout, and let's be able to start spring training the way it should be, with a nice bang and all the rosy, sentimental, heartwarming stories and the mythology and the romance of spring training. I look forward to doing that again, but certainly all the stuff you read now is gloom and doom heading towards December 1. It's scary.
And that could affect the free agency market too, if there's a lot.
Well, it's going to bollocks up everything in terms of timing, and timing's everything. And who's going to be the first one to go, and then where do the dominoes fall from there?
Dave, you're so generous for your time. I think I got one more question. I got a friend who sent me a text. I'm trying to make this show interactive and let the audience have a little role here. And my friend has a question about the M's decision not exercise Seager's option. And my friend has an interesting question. He's wondering if there's some way the M's could ever get Seager back with a lower contract. I guess I'm trying to summarize this question.
That ship has sailed. That's all you need to know.
Seems like it, doesn't it?
Yeah, that's over.
That's over. Yeah.
That's the way it goes. I mean, I like the guy. Wish him all the luck in the world, but he'll have a different address, and he will go into the Mariners Hall of Fame. I don't think there's any question about that. I mean, he's top 5 in multiple categories, and it was a great run, and it was really just outstanding having him. I remember when he showed up. Good Lord, 10, 11 years ago, and a fresh-faced kid, and he was a terrific third baseman and a power guy and a dependable guy. And time has come and gone, and we move forward from there.
Not everything lasts forever, That's
certainly not in baseball. It doesn't.
Not in baseball, that's for sure. That's for sure. Well, Dave, thanks so much for being so generous of your time today and coming back on my Sports Untold podcast. I really enjoy our conversations, and it's great to have you come back.
Appreciate it, Paul. Thanks for your time. Enjoyed the visit, and hey, have a happy Thanksgiving.
You too, Dave. Happy holidays. Thank you so much.
All right. Be well.
Bye-bye. You too.